what's your basic belief? What the basic belief of your house is about this year's budget? How crucial would it be? And what are the key things that you guys are watching out
Certainly, Neeraj. First of all, I think the fiscal deficit, as you were mentioning, is going to be a statement number because there is an ongoing debate about should the government focus on fiscal consolidation or should they expand the fiscal deficit and worry about stimulating the economic growth. We are in the camp of the latter. We do think that the government will continue to work with an expansionary fiscal policy. Specifically, we are looking at 5% for the central fiscal deficit as the number that they will put out. And remember, this is on the top of 7.2% fiscal deficit that we expect in this fiscal. And if that comes through, then clearly the headline or the statement that the government will try to put forth is that this is a growth budget. And we do think that the government will work on a demand side as well as supply side stimulus measures. Though we think that the supply side measures will be more in comparison to the demand side measures.
Okay. So is it safe to assume that you would believe, and some large investors across the world would be happy if the number put out is, say, circa 5% for the next year with some indication of a glide path? You think that would be acceptable to investors and maybe to rating agencies as well, because they would recognize that it's a COVID period and therefore there are a lot of uncertainties around?
Absolutely, Neeraj. It would be. And we've spoken to a few rating agencies as well. We've hosted them with investors too. They are not particularly perturbed with the fiscal deficit, especially in the context of the COVID year. Globally, the fiscal deficits are being taken up. They understand this. But in case, if despite the fiscal deficit, the outlook on economic growth doesn't change, or if there is no glide path, or if there is no visibility on how the debt to GDP ratio for India would come down, that I think are bigger worries. So I don't think that 5% fiscal deficit number in itself is going to be worrying for the credit rating agencies for a downgrade. As far as India is able to talk about structural reforms, revival of economic growth, corporate earnings coming back, doing logical things on improving ease of doing business and all the long-term things in India, as far as we are on that track, I think it's not a worry from a credit rating agency's perspective, and markets and our investors will certainly cheer it up.
Got it. So therefore, the follow-up question, Amish, naturally is that, do you think this needs to be a budget that is laced with oodles of capitalism or signs of capitalism, or a socio budget would be good? Because I wonder if markets or rating agencies or whoever will be happy with a budget that has got a higher fiscal deficit number, but looks overly socialist in nature, because that would probably hamper productivity and the ability of the government to repay these monies as time comes, right? So does it necessarily need to be a budget laced with economy boosting / capitalism measures?
Again, completely agree. Absolutely, Neeraj. That is what would be required. And I think if you look at this government as well, historically, they have been on a glide path for subsidies or handouts, as you call it, as a percentage of the budget expenditure. So you would recollect that back in FY13, subsidies as a percentage of budgetary expenditure was about 15%. We have slowly come down to 8%, which is almost half versus where we were in about 7 years' time. I do think that the trend especially will continue on that path. Clearly, in certain sectors like hospitality, etc., where there was a need, given the impact of COVID specifically hitting those sectors. So there may be some transitory subsidies provided, but I really don't think that this government is likely to go too much in favor of subsidies, really.